Hey there everybody, and welcome to D&D Doge's Emporium of RPG Horror Story Cringe. In today's episode, we have a tale about a dungeon master that basically targets a player under the guise of bad luck. A story about a dungeon master using a player's real-life issues as their backstory, and much more. But first, some kitties to farm them likes, comments, and subscriptions. There we go. I mean, they do say that the internet runs on cats after all. Anyways, with that said, let's get into these stories. DM chooses stats for you based off your backstory. By Reddit user, No Hearing, 8995. Several years ago, one of my friends wanted to take his first stab at DMing. He got our usual crew of people who play in either my game or my brother's game, as we both DM'd. So we all knew each other very well, and all knew the fundamentals of how D&D should go. A new DM friend, we'll call him David, says he wants to incorporate some homebrew rules, but only if we would all agree to it. This included minor tweaks like, health potions are a bonus action for yourself, but an action to apply to someone else. Unarmed strikes can be used as a bonus action two-weapon fighting attack, rather than just light weapons. And some other small tweaks. None of the players, myself included, had any complaints. So now, we get into character creation. David tells us he's going to be splitting our group into 2 campaigns, as there are 8 players, so 2 groups of 4 meeting bi-weekly. The gimmick being, one group is the heroes, and one group is the villains. Again, we're all on board with this, as it sounds like it would be built into a very cool finale. My brother and I end up on different groups. He'd be part of the ragtag adventuring party, and I'd be part of the King's Army Death Squadron. This is where the problems started to come in. David told us to pick a race and class, and then come up with backstories, and we'll roll stats at some point together, so I see you roll them. That way I don't think you guys cheated. Which is fair, because we have had some flubbers in previous games, who were like, yeah, I totally just rolled only 18s, man. So we come up with our backstories, and my guy was the typical, I'm a rough and rugged soldier who's done some hard training and loves a good fight. A standard easy character for a first time DM. Whoa, wait, it's this dude's first time being a dungeon master? I think running 2 parallel games is a bit too ambitious for someone's first time. After submitting my backstory to David, I get a message from him a few hours later that just says, Strength 14, Dexterity 12, Constitution 15, Intelligence 9, Wisdom 9, Charisma 10. I replied with, what are those? And David says, your stats. And naturally, I'm like, huh? Because he said we'd be rolling them together later. So I start asking him about them, and his response was along the lines of, well, in your backstory, you said you had only received some training, and you never included that you went to school, so that's why your mental stats are so low, and your strength is only 14. You did say that you lived rugged, so your con is a little high. To which my response was, dude, I put I had only received some training, because we're starting at level 1. Can't really say that I've slain gods, and am the strongest to have ever lived at level 1. Also, you said we'd roll stats together. To which David says, yeah, I lied. I'm choosing your guys' stats. So as all the other players started turning in their backstories, I started receiving messages from them as I'm the group's usual DM. The messages were along the lines of, hey, is he serious with the stat thing? I'm gonna quit if it's going to be this controlling. Bruh, he made my intelligence 4 because I said my name was Grub. So after some back and forth with David and the party, several of us decided to quit rather than participate. Myself included, leaving only 4 of the original 8 players. My brother decided to stay in the game, so from here on out, it's what I've heard from him. My brother says, yeah, anytime Grub wants to do something, David has been making him roll an idea check, basically saying that Grub's player goes, I'd like to go over to the barkeep and get a drink. Then he has to roll a DC 15 intelligence check, or fail to have the idea to do so and suffer 1d8 of brain hemorrhage as you're too stupid to think. Yeah, they didn't get more than 25% through that first session. Yeah, David did really start to show his new DM colors there. Trying to pull off something as ambitious as running 2 parallel games is one thing, but to then pull the "I choose your stats" is another. I'm sure at the time, it sounded like a good idea in his mind, and would revolutionize DMing. But in execution, his reasoning for the stats that he gave failed in all aspects, especially with the quote-unquote idea checks. It's no wonder he lost half of his players before the game even started, and then the rest a quarter of the way through his first game. Let's move on. DM ruined D&D for a decade by trying to include my sister's essay as a story element. By Reddit user Feisty Advantage 5890. Back in high school, they tried starting a D&D club while I was a freshman. Being an eternal awkward dork, it sounded like the best shot at having an after-school activity, so I was pretty excited to try since I had never played before, but I haven't played since. Sadly important, my older sister was dealing with a traumatic event with an ex that was the hot gossip of our town at the time. I had been avoiding the topic consciously because we're both close, and the way other people poke and prod for details makes me want to puke. Anyway, I joined the first after-school meeting where we made characters quickly and hopped into session 1 after like 30 minutes. The DM was an older guy that they brought in to teach the basic game, and he started off with quick backstories for the others on why they all ended up at the same pub. Then he got to me and started explaining that my character has been having reoccurring nightmares and started describing my sister's real effing attack in detail. I wish I called him out sooner, but I let him finish, and I still regret it. After that, I stopped and asked him what the F, and I remember him looking me in the eyes and saying, "If you want this roleplay to be good, you need to be emotionally invested." Ugh. I left not long after, despite the others getting pissed, since they wanted to start. I didn't even consider trying D&D again until a few months ago, and I'm still a little gun-shy on the commitment. So yeah, any new DMs out there, heed this advice. Don't effing do this, please. Jesus, what a scumbag. Tabletop RPGs like D&D are supposed to be a way to escape our real lives for a few hours, and for someone to bring something that is happening to a player, or someone a player knows into the game, is a scummy move, no matter how small. And for this DM to bring something as awful as what OP and their sister were dealing with at the time into the game is one of the scummiest things I have heard while reading these stories. Hopefully, this dude was reported for this BS and was promptly kicked to the curb by the school. It does suck that this DM put OP off of playing D&D for so long, but I hope everything goes more smoothly for them going forward. Let's move on. "You're just unlucky," scoffs the GM. By Reddit user Chaos of Calamite. I remember joining a game with a group of players at one point for a game of 5e D&D. It was a while ago, but this still annoys me. While yes, it's a dice game, where there are chances of being unlucky, being near death 4 games in a row and finally dying in the 5th session because, yes, feels really cheated. For a bit of context, I was playing a rogue who was cursed with undead and was seeking a cure for it. Basically, he was sorta like a zombie with sentience, and the GM allowed it. The story was, well, another isekai trope game. I learned to start despising this trope because, while it can work in some games, it's all I've seen for several games, and my biggest issue with it is it means your character has zero connection to the world that they're exploring. But besides that, my biggest issue was during several moments. My character got shafted in just about every scenario because of quote-unquote bad luck rolls behind the GM screen. My other issue was the fact that the GM was trying to shove gods into the player characters' lives once they were in the world, and I was playing a character who, in his mind, worked hard for a living and praying to deities didn't put food on the table. Yes, I was a pretty petty character, but on the opposite end, I was willing to help the party out. I want to point a few things out before people get the impression of, "Oh, you played a lone wolf, jerk character." Yes, I was a bit standoffish, but to put it into context, the reason why I rarely interacted with the NPCs was 1. I was not charismatically built, and 2. If anyone found out I was undead, they'd get the guards to kill me. So yeah. Mind you, the party is levels 1 through 2 at this point, so I'm hiding because of my character thinking, "Oh god, I don't want to get executed." Plus, when our drow player got taken, despite getting death threats from him constantly, I was the first to jump into a Drider's den to try and save him from a kidnapping. Now that that's off my chest, time to get into the real problems. My quote-unquote bad luck. Remember when I said that the GM was trying to connect deities to our characters to try and give us a greater purpose? Well, as an undead, I got the demon lord Orcus. For context, Orcus is a sadistic, evil demon lord of the undead who hates all life, and as you could probably tell, I kept making it vocally clear that, nope, I do not want anything to do with this guy. For 1, he's a demon, and 2, he's clearly evil. But when I literally give Orcus the bird and told him to bother someone else, he was hell-bent on forcing me into servitude, leaving some soul brand on my chest that burned my very being in agony when I kept trying to object Orcus and get away from him. Telling the party this, they just shrug it off. Well, that's a lot of help. I mean, doesn't Orcus have thousands of other more powerful undead to command? I'm a level 2 rogue nobody. But you know what Orcus demanded from me? Orcus: "I want you to retrieve the hand and eye of Vecna. You have 1 week, or you perish." Me: "What? No, I'm not doing that." Cue me having the brand burn, forcing me to writhe in pain because LMAO, Orcus. Cool, this guy I hate wants something impossible from me or I die. No way am I gonna help this guy out, he's a jackass. Besides that, we're finding bits of loot here and there. The party finds some magic loot and really cool stuff. I get shoestrings and this coin purse that I pickpocketed off of an NPC, not a player. Yes, I was playing a kleptomaniac rogue. I get back, and while players are getting hundreds of gold in value worth of items, I got the 5 gold I picked. So, joy. Fine, whatever. I move on. We find a caravan with an old lady in it, asking us to draw tarot cards. Oh, by the way, we're level 2. 1 player drew, and several jewels, worth hundreds, dropped at their feet. Another player drew, and got a god tier relic. If you couldn't guess what this is the dreaded Deck of Many Things. As a player, I knew exactly what this was, but I didn't want to metagame, so I asked the GM. Being a kleptomaniac rogue, and seeing players draw cards and getting epic loot, I wonder, you think I might draw a card too? GM: "Honestly, you might be inclined to draw 2 cards. And as a player, I really didn't want to, but my rogue, failing his Arcana roll to know what it was, drew 2 cards. One of the cards was Death. Oh, and the other gave the entire party a level at the end of the encounter, so no unique loot for the rogue. Joy. And yeah, if we were going by the actual rules of the game, this Reaper that spawns to try and kill you would scale with the player level, which would be a 2. But no, this was the GM's Reaper, and so it had a lot of BS abilities like trapping its target in an 80-foot radius dome to fight in, and it deals 2d12 necrotic damage per hit. Fortunately for me, being undead, I had necrotic resistance, so I survived with 1 hit point. I also had undead fortitude, which I barely passed the con save on. At this point, the party's panicking. I'm asking them for help, and the GM decided that one of the gods jumps in to slay the Reaper. Oh joy, more deity BS to throw in this. And then it had the gall to say, "You should be more careful." That's just one example of several strings of bad luck I get while the party revels in loot. So after that near disaster, I asked the GM. Me: "Hey, this feels really targeted, and I'm starting to not have fun." GM: Well, ask your party for help with these sort of problems. Me. I do. I'm not talking about the loot they earned, but I've been in a lot of situations where I'm near death, and my rewards are just table scraps. GM. That's how the dice roll. You were just unlucky. I mean, yeah, it's a dice game, and it's not like it's always like this. Sometimes other players have bad luck too, but I've had 0 good luck experiences like the rest of the party, and I was feeling sort of miffed. Come the following session, and my week's up, and I don't have the eye or hand of Vecna. By the way, these are god-tier relics that are near impossible to find. For a bit of context, you wouldn't be trying to find these things unless you were a minimum of a level 18 or something character. And Orcus wanted me to find these, in a week, as a level 2. So, more deity intervention BS comes in. A deity comes in, and after some dumb banter where, again, my character wants nothing to do with these deities, but he knows he will die if he doesn't and accepts their help. So he relents and does so. This deity gives him the hand and eye of Vecna. Apparently, this was some trickster deity. I don't know, I dropped before I could even learn it. But then I had these things and it was bargaining time. I even asked the GM if these were real, and he stated flatly, "Yeah, they are." Cue me being in a one-on-one conversation with Orcus. I still hate the guy, and this is the one singular instance where I metagamed, because it kinda made sense. In our characters' old lives, before being transported to this world, our characters were originally, quote-unquote, LARPers, who roleplayed things that worked similarly to this game world. And my character, using that game knowledge, argued that I have a pretty good idea of how these things worked. So I go through the process of putting the eye and hand on my character, because heck, if I want to serve this guy, I was expecting some epic duel or something. GM. Orcus kills you. Me. Oh, but what about the arm and eye? Couldn't they do anything? GM. They're fake, and it's hilarious that you didn't know that. At this point, I was fuming. Halfway through the death scene, I just left the call. I was pretty miffed. No death saves. I was told that they were real only for them to be fake, and my character just dies. Screw that GM in particular. GM. Oh, the other players are having fun. Why weren't you? Me. Of course they're having fun. They're constantly having rewards rain down on them, and they weren't constantly getting shafted. GM. That's just how the dice landed. You're just a salty lone wolf. I argued at that point that my character doesn't socialize because he's a low charisma zombie who gets uncomfortable getting near people, but he did confide in the other party members with issues and try to be helpful. Is there a level of bad luck one can have before it starts to have a depressing time? I was trudging along for 5 sessions and died cause Orcus thought you were becoming a threat. I was sitting here arguing. Doesn't Orcus have several thousands of undead or any other high tier undead to go and do his bidding for him? I'm a level 2 nobody, just thrown into the world, still trying to get their bearings. I didn't have any epic powers or an awesome god bloodline. My character was literally a dude that sold green stuff in his old life and became a level 2 thief. But hey, I died because I'm unlucky, right? Honestly, it sounds like that DM didn't like that OP didn't want his character to go along with the deity thing, and was actively targeting OP's character for it. I mean, the whole thing about getting the eye and hand of Vecna as a level 2 character should have been included that, let alone giving all the other players good loot and magic items, yet doing nothing for OP. Then there was the whole thing with the DM telling OP that the hand and the eye that the deity gave them was real, only for him to insta-kill OP's character for trying to use them against the demon. Leaving this game was probably for the best. But before we get into the next one, do you have a story that you would like to see on the channel? If so, be sure to post it to the D&D Doge subreddit, and who knows, it may just end up in a video, much like our final story of the day. Likely ticked off a DM who I have never met. Submitted to the D&D Doge subreddit by Reddit user Jafiki. Hello. Been watching and enjoying your videos lately, and I've decided to try and give my own story, although it's a shorter story than most. English is my first language, so blame me for any mistakes. A while back, I decided to try and earn some side money while going through school. I'm not good at drawing art, so I decided to type art instead. I went to a small website that you can post an auction on, so other people can bid to buy art, adopts, and so on. I didn't expect to get much attention because I was the only story writer posted, so I had my rates low. This was my first mistake. Well, there ended up being a small bidding war, and in the end, I had earned a $50 commission to write a 22,000-word story of whatever the winner wanted. Since I'm posting it here, I'm sure you can guess what it was. It was a backstory, and for a D&D character, a female half-demon. At the time, I wasn't sure how to write backstories for D&D characters, so I wrote a story of how the half-demon got into adventuring, found their armor and axe, and how they started their search for their parents. When it was all said and done, it had taken me about a month to write, just shy of 23,000 words, 50 pages. I'm not sure how well it was written, but the buyer accepted it with open arms, and told me that it was just in time for their D&D session that was the next day. Note that I was never given a deadline to finish their backstory. So, I had given his DM less than 24 hours to read 50 pages of backstory that was likely late. I wonder who the DM blames for that. Well, at least that player can say that they have the most detailed backstory. Hopefully, that player just gave their DM the Cliff Notes version of it, because that is a bit to read a day before a game is set to start, and I'm sure that DM was already busy getting all the last-minute prep stuff done. Though, my question is, what was the player planning to do if OP had not finished it before the game? I suppose we'll never know. But that will do it for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.